What up, everybody? Blake Terrence here. We're doing a little impromptu live action episode of Calling It How I See It here. I'm sitting at my lovely girlfriend Serena's house. We're just watching the draft. We're about to enter the second half of the draft. We got the 15th pick coming up next, which I believe will be the Atlanta Falcons. Nothing too surprising in the first 14 picks. Panthers reached, shocker, a little bit. Yes, you will see dogs running through and into and out of the frame. Panthers reached a little bit at receiver at the 8th pick for McMillan. Thought he might go more around where we are now, around pick 14 or 15. Thought he was going to go to Dallas, actually, more like at 13, but didn't happen. They end up taking Booker, the big guard out of Alabama. Nothing really too shocking. Cam Ward, been the only quarterback taken so far, number 1 overall by the Titans. We did see Travis Hunter go to Jacksonville and not Cleveland. He was the second player taken, as everybody expected, but Jacksonville gave up quite a bit to swap places with Cleveland. I'm not sure how I feel about that one for them. And then Ashton Jeanty, the big running back out of Boise State that made so much headwind this year. He's officially a Las Vegas Raider. So they're trying to restock that old school football mantra. And then, for the Chiefs, none of the players that I kind of had on my short list of guys I would hope for them to take are gone yet. Kenneth Grant was one defensive tackle I was a little interested in. He just went at pick 13 to the Dolphins. Cowboys had 12, sorry, not 13. Or no, it was 13 and then 14. That's my bad. So anyway, Grant went to the Dolphins. That was a run stuffer, potential bit of a pass rushing juice, DT. So that one could have been a nice pick for the Chiefs. But other than that, Derek Harmon from Oregon and Walter Nolan were the big 2 defensive tackles. Nolan's from Ole Miss. Hold on, we got another pick coming in. So we've had a couple Georgia edges go, not in the last 3 or 4 picks. We had Michael Williams, and then just now Walker. So some edges certainly starting to fly off the board. For what it's worth, Brett Veach in his press conference did say that he was a little more keen on the edges than the tackles in this class. Now, I wonder if that's just because there maybe is a little more depth at edge and the top tackles are a little more top-heavy. But you still have Harmon and Nolan on the board, 2 of the better pass-rushing interior D linemen in this class. You had Mason Graham go early in the draft out of Michigan, their star pass-rushing interior D lineman. Grant, more of a run stuffer out of Michigan. So we've had a couple guys where, both edges went. Georgia's gotten both of their edges taken. You had Michigan with a couple of their interior linemen taken. Penn State, of course, had Abdul Carter, the consensus best edge, went first from their team, went 3rd overall to New York. And then their tight end, Tyler Warren, went to Indianapolis. So some definite favoring of the dominant teams in college football so far. You've had a couple guys from Georgia go. You had Booker from Alabama. Will Campbell was the first offensive tackle off the board, as everybody expected, from LSU. And Armand Membu, we can't forget to shout out our Mizzou guy, 7th overall to the New York Jets. Kind of a late bloomer, shot up the draft boards this year. Most people probably would have thought Luther Burden would go ahead of him coming into this year, but he really surpassed him. So big shout out to our Mizzou guy going 7th overall. Please don't knock the tripod over, dogs. Live action for you guys. So we just had our 15th pick. I believe Falcons was 15th when they selected Walker. So, still half the first round to go before we even get to the Chiefs pick. So I talked about Harmon and Nolan. Josh Simmons out of Ohio State is a guy I'd really like to see them take. The Chiefs always like to take that day one draft risk, whether it's trading up several picks to draft McDuffie a few years ago. Last year they made that small trade up to get Worthy. I think a good way they could do that this year without even needing to trade is to take Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. Offensive tackle. Most people agreed without injury, he would probably have been the first tackle off the board this draft. That's the kind of talent you're talking about. But he tore his patellar tendon this season, so he's still recovering from that. So he's probably not going to be available day one, but the Chiefs kind of have their tackles set going into the year at least. But, most people seem to think Simmons is a left tackle prospect of the future. So if he can fall all the way to 31 and you get a guy who would have been a top 10, maybe even top 5 pick, you had LSU's Campbell went 4th, I believe. Usually the top offensive tackle goes in the top 5. And if you can get a guy who has that kind of talent down at 31 just because you got to let him recover, I mean, the Chiefs are in a perfect position to do that. They've got, at least the 2 faces they feel comfortable with. I'm sure Jalen Moore is not locked and loaded and set in stone at left tackle, but they don't have an immediate desperation need. Perfect opportunity for them there. Josh Connerly Jr., another guy out of Oregon. You got another twofer there. You got Oregon with a defensive lineman, Derek Harmon, expected to go in the first round, and then Connerly, their tackle, a bit more of a fringe first-round guy. Some people think he could slide into the early second. But if the Chiefs were to snag him, great athlete. Some people think he protects more as a right tackle, though the positions are almost equally important in today's league. Mimbu from Mizzou went 7th, and most people seem to think he might be a right tackle. So, you gotta have good tackles at both spots at this point. So I'd be okay with that as well. Edge guys, really, there isn't a specific guy that stands out once you get past Carter and Graham. I guess Graham played as much on the interior as the edge, but then you had the Georgia guys that just went. You got Shamar Stewart as an example. Nick Skirton is a name I'd heard. I think he might be more of a second-round guy, but, once you're in the 30s, you are taking second-round guys a lot of the time. So less star power there, just guys that might be more of glue guys, like the George Karlaftis types, good in the run game, dependable with a slightly lower ceiling, higher floor type on the edge, most likely. So those are options. And then I would be okay with a receiver as well. Luther Burton, I think, has fallen down a lot of people's draft boards. I think nobody would have expected him to be available for the Chiefs going into this past season. We had a bit of an underwhelming season. I blame that more on Missouri's offense and their quarterback play, and just the fact they didn't get to see a full route tree from him. The scouts didn't. So I think he would be a good fit here. I would be okay with receivers. I'd prefer him not to repeat the Clyde Edwards-Helaire experiment. Well, okay, so Walter Nolan, the Ole Miss defensive tackle, probably the best pass rushing tackle in the draft, just went to the Arizona Cardinals at 16th. So there's the first guy that I think the Chiefs actually could have targeted actually off the board. So now you're down to really one defensive tackle prospect left that you feel is first-round caliber, and Derek Harmon out of Oregon. So he'll probably be gone by the time the Chiefs pick comes around. So I'm guessing it's more likely going to be, kind of a fringy second-round type edge, maybe Simmons or Connerly if they fall the tackle spot, or you could see some offensive player. Both the 2 premium tight ends, Penn State's Warren, and then Loveland from, I'm probably going to butcher. Was he maybe a Texas guy? But anyway, the 2 premier tight ends are off the board. So, most likely I would say an offensive tackle or an edge. The Chiefs very well could trade down, though. Don't be shocked if we do all this and then they trade out of the first round and don't make a pick tonight. Depends what they can, they want to try to fill in that 100-gap pick that they have between the 4th and 7th round, too. So I wouldn't be opposed to that if none of the guys that we talked about make it all the way down to them and they think they're more or less interchangeable with picks in the 30s to 40s. So, go ahead and wrap this video up here. I think Marty's going to join us here in a little bit. Might see what positions she's thinking, what she's thought of the draft so far, and then we'll make sure to record just before the Chiefs pick comes in as well so we can get you guys our live reaction. So stay tuned.